The House will come to order. Members will be at their seats. The clerk has opened the roll and you may record your presence. Please rise and give your attention to our guest chaplain, Pastor Doug Hinkle, Garden City, Kansas, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Representative Owsley.
Let us pray. Father God, thank you for the rest through the night. Thank you for the opportunity to meet the challenges of today. These challenges can appear overwhelming, the solutions elusive. Yet we know that you, O Lord, the ultimate statesman, have the resolution to every obstacle. So we look forward with great anticipation to seeing your Holy Spirit move in the Kansas House of Representatives as differences are resolved and satisfactory solutions are achieved to your glory and for the benefit of our state. As we work through the day, cause us to argue our positions, to present reasons for or against the matters at hand in an honorable way, worthy of the office of representative. Remind us that our lives can be the greatest example we have for those we govern, and that our lives and actions can help set the pace and the direction for our state and nation. Encourage us, Father, and remind us that you have placed us in our roles here to be used in incredible ways by you, and you have not left us here on our own. You are with us. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Has every member had the opportunity to record their presence? The clerk will close the roll and record the attendance. Messages from the Senate, the clerk will read.
The Senate non-concurs in House amendments to SB 23, request a conference, and has appointed Senators Dietrich, Faig, and Francisco as conferees on the part of the Senate. The Senate non-concurs in House amendments SB 24, request a conference, and has appointed Senators Dietrich, Faig, and Francisco as conferees on the part of the Senate. The Senate accedes to the request of the House for a conference on HB 2029 and has appointed Senators Peterson, Clues, and Corson as conferees on the part of the Senate. The Senate accedes to the request of the House for a conference on HB 2042 and has appointed Senators Dietrich, Faig, and Francisco as conferees on the part of the Senate. The Senate accedes to the request of the House for a conference on HB 2043 and has appointed Senators Dietrich, Faig, and Francisco as conferees on the part of the Senate. The Senate accedes to the request of the House for a conference on HB 2045 and has appointed Senators Dietrich, Faig, and Francisco as conferees on the part of the Senate. The Senate accedes to the request of the House for a conference on HB 2124 and has appointed Senators Peterson, Clues, and Corson as conferees on the part of the Senate. The Senate accedes to the request of the House for a conference on HB 2155 and has appointed Senators Warren, Titus, and Corson as conferees on the part of the Senate. The Senate accedes to the request of the House for a conference on HB 2347 and has appointed Senators Warren, Titus, and Corson as conferees on the part of the Senate. The Senate concurs in House amendments to SB 5. The Senate concurs in House amendments to SB 6. The Senate adopts the Conference Committee report on SB 105.
The Speaker recognizes Majority Leader Croft for a motion to accede.
The Senate did not concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 23 and requested a conference. I move the House accede to the request of the Senate and that a conference committee be appointed.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. Motion passes. As conferees on part of the House, the Speaker appoints Representatives Sutton, Bergkamp, and Neighbor. Proceed.
The Senate did not concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 24 and requested a conference. I move the House accede to the request of the Senate and that a conference committee be appointed.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The motion passes. As conferees on part of the House, the Speaker appoints Representative Sutton, Burkamp, and Neighbor. Final action on bills and concurrent resolutions, the clerk will read.
HB 2402 by Committee on Appropriations, an act concerning education, creating the Blue Ribbon Commission on Higher Education, establishing the membership and purpose of the commission, requiring the submission of preliminary and final reports to the legislature on the commission's findings and recommendations.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2402. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The roll is still open. The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, with 98 having voted in favor and 24 against the passage of House Bill 2402, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The clerk will read.
SB 50 by Committee on Education, an act concerning education relating to the State Board of Regents, establishing uniform interest rate provisions for scholarship programs that include repayment obligations as a condition of receiving a scholarship, authorizing the board to recover the cost of collecting such repayment obligations and to charge fees for the cost of administering cost scholarship, grant, and other financial assistance programs, requiring eligible students to enter into agreements with the State Board of Regents instead of a post-secondary educational institution as a condition to receiving a grant under the Adult Learner Grant Act.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 50. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. As every member had the opportunity to record their vote, the clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, with 119 having voted in favor and 3 against the passage of Senate Bill 50, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The clerk will read.
SB 78 by Committee on Education, an act concerning education relating to post-secondary educational institutions, requiring such institutions to regularly review and update accreditation policies, prohibiting accrediting agencies from compelling such institutions to violate state law, providing a cause of action for violations thereof.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 78. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. As every member had the opportunity to record their vote, the clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, with 86 having voted in favor and 36 against the passage of Senate Bill 78, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The clerk will read. Proceed.
SB 114 by Committee on Education, an act concerning education relating to certain ancillary school district activities, authorizing non-public school students and virtual school students to participate in such activities, making it unlawful for a school district or the state high school activities association to discriminate against such students based on enrollment status.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 114. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. As every member had the opportunity to record their vote, the clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Laura Williams votes aye. Any further changes? Seeing none. With 83 having voted in favor and 39 against the passage of Senate Bill 114, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The Speaker recognizes Representative Waymaster for a motion to adopt the Conference Committee report on Senate Bill 14.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt the Conference Committee report on Senate Bill 14. If you recall, Senate Bill 14 was a bill that we debated, I believe, last week in regards to the continuing appropriations in the event that the governor would happen to veto a budget bill in its entirety. This would still have the continuing appropriations off of the previous year. The only changes that were made in Conference Committee, if you recall, to the amended Senate Bill 14, we had an amendment that was put in the committee and then also an amendment that was on the floor due to concerns, especially in regards to the one on the floor and I guess the one in committee as well. There was some ambiguity in regards to the effectiveness of that. So on lines 7 through 17, they were stricken. The other change that was made in committee was just a clarification of a continuing appropriation. That did remain. That's on page 4, items or lines 12 through 13. Also, it was changed on section 2 on page 4. It says this act shall take effect and be enforced from then after its publication in the state register, not the statute book. And then there was also depending on the wording that you would like to use, a sunset or appeal where this would only be effect for 5 years, and then it would take an act of the legislature in order to continue its effectiveness. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'd stand for questions.
Is there discussion? The Speaker recognizes Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would have to say this bill is unnecessary. We have never not completed a budget in the legislature. That's not to say it cannot happen, but we have not. And even under the conditions we were with a new budget, 2 budgets working this session, we finished in a timely manner. We met our deadline. Again, I'll say it's unnecessary, and our job is to pass a budget. I'm opposed, and I will vote no. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Helgerson.
Would the carrier of the bill stand for question?
Oh, yeah. $2?
No. For you, it's going to be more. Can you explain a little bit what the rationale of the Senate was in continuing getting paid if there's a continuing resolution?
That really wasn't a concern by the Senate per se. It was actually from the revisers that you can't restrict the pay of a constitutional office. And so that would be restricting the pay of the governor. So that is why we, in agreement with the Senate, we decided to strike the entire amendment that was made by yourself on the House floor.
Was there any other discussion about, well, maybe there's some way of holding the governor's feet to the fire without taking their money?
No, there was not.
All right, thank you very much. Well, I was going to support this, and I've had some questions now. I did support it. You know, I don't like the idea of having us be paid if we reach a loggerheads with the governor. I don't know. I think that we could have reached some agreement. I think the other amendment we could have had some agreement on that, but there wasn't really an interest of getting this done. Hopefully this never comes to fruition, but at the same time, you know, hell, we'll end up spending a lot of money for doing nothing. Oh, that's what we do sometimes anyway.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative, you may close.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I close and move the conference committee report for Senate Bill 14.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 14. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? For an explanation, the speaker. Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Hoheisel votes aye. Any further changes? Seeing none. With 81 having voted in favor and 41 against the passage of Senate Bill 14, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The Speaker recognizes Majority Leader Croft for a motion to resolve into the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of considering those items under the heading of General Orders.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is carried. The Speaker appoints Representative Turk to chair the Committee of the Whole.
All right, let's roll. The first item of business is HB 2223. For the purpose of carrying HB 2223, the chair recognizes Representative Bueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the adoption of the committee report. I rise before the body to present House Bill 2223. So I want to give you a little bit of a background. House Bill 2223 would modify various provisions of the optometry law relating to scope of practice, definitions, and credentialing requirements. So a little background on the bill, and I know many of you have received tons of emails on this topic. The bill was before the Health and Human Services Committee last week, and during committee, there were 14 proponents, 4 opponents, and 1 neutral testimony. Also, during the course of hearing it in committee, there were at least 3 or 4 amendments that were voted down and failed in committee as well. And I would not be surprised if we see amendments on the bill again today. The bill did pass in committee by a 2-to-1 margin. And also for historical context, this bill has been introduced in Health and Human Services at least the last 3 years. This is the first year that we've had a hearing on the bill, and just for personal reference, I've been a supporter of this bill for the previous 3. So ask yourself the question, what will House Bill 2223 do? House Bill 2223 will modernize the profession of optometry by allowing doctors of optometry in Kansas to perform procedures that they have been educated, trained, and certified to do. Specifically, House Bill 2223 allows optometrists to provide office procedures, including removing lid lesions such as cysts, styes, and skin tags, and to use injectable medications, excluding intraocular. The ones that you've heard about in email, you'll hear the term the YAG or YAG, which is to remove a cataract film. There's an SLT and a peripheral iridotomy, which are glaucoma treatments. As I said, the bill will also allow the optometrist to perform these 3 specific laser procedures: laser capsulotomy, selective laser trabeculoplasty, and laser peripheral iridotomy. In addition, this is a critical component, House Bill 2223 also excludes an extensive list of procedures that are not currently in contemporary optometric education and training. Optometrists have been licensed in our state to provide care for patients in Kansas for more than 100 years. However, there have been no significant changes to the Optometric Practice Act for more than 15 years. Because optometry is a legislated profession and scope of practice is determined by each state legislature or us, the Optometric Practice Acts vary from state to state. The current scope of practice in Kansas is more restrictive than an increasing number of states, including neighboring states of Oklahoma, Colorado, Wyoming, and Arkansas. My friends. This makes Kansas a less desirable option for optometric students to choose to practice in. And upon graduation, at a time when the numbers of ophthalmologists are decreasing nationwide, particularly in rural areas, in short, we have Kansas optometrists trained to do these procedures, and the scope of practice prevents them from treating patients in Kansas. So the question is this: are optometrists well-educated, trained, and certified to perform the procedures in House Bill 2223? The answer is a resounding yes. This is supported by this statistic. Over 146,000 of these procedures are performed safely by optometrists in 12 states. And here's the bottom line. Optometrists are trained to do these procedures in optometry school. They should be allowed to perform them in their practices in the state of Kansas. This bill will also expand eye care in this state in both rural and suburban areas. The training and certification for these procedures is the same for both ophthalmologists and optometrists. In fact, when we were in committee, asked one of the opponents of the bill, side by side, ophthalmologists and optometrists receive the same training to do primarily the three procedures in question. They have the same certification, and they have the same proficiency skill or expectation when they're done. So it's the same. Kansas Board of Optometry, of Examiners in Optometry indicates the bill's enactment would have a negligible impact on operations of the board. Before I go on, I want to have some comments. So let's talk about optometry in this state. Here's a...
Excuse me, Representative. We got to keep it quiet, guys. I can't hear him, and he's 10 feet away. Please carry on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Here's the background on optometry in our state. In 1909, the Kansas Board of Optometry was established. In 1977, optometrists were granted authority to use pharmacologic agents to do these things: dilate pupils for examination, anesthetize corneas for tonometry, temporarily paralyze focusing muscles for diagnosis. Essentially, this allowed optometrists to use diagnostic pharmaceuticals. In 1987, Senate Bill 113. This bill allowed optometrists to treat certain eye diseases using topical pharmaceutical agents, removing embedded foreign bodies that do not penetrate the eyeball. Essentially, this allowed optometrists to use topical pharmaceuticals and to remove foreign bodies. In 1996, Senate Bill 684 authorized optometrists to treat glaucoma with topical pharmaceutical agents and allowed for treatment of glaucoma using topical pharmaceuticals. In 1999, House Bill 2117 expanded their prescribing authority to include oral antibiotics and oral antivirals. Also included were oral antihistamines, oral analgesics, and including narcotics up to the Schedule II for ocular conditions, which included oral medications. And this was the last vast significant change in scope of practice. In 2010, House Bill 2584 allowed optometrists to dispense medicated contact lenses beyond the 24-hour supply limit. This was actually at the request of Johnson & Johnson. In the day, Kansas had a one-day supply for optometrists, and they had to change the law to make it where the contracts could be dispensed at greater than 1 day. Last piece of legislation I'll talk about previous is 2012. It was House Bill 2525, which standardized optometry licensure levels and clarified minor surgical procedures permitted for Kansas optometrists. So you take a look back at what this bill does. It puts us on a level playing field with 12 other states. Doesn't induce any safety concerns, and I know all the emails that everybody has been receiving really amounts to either what could be considered scare tactics or the like. The bottom line, though, this is a good bill. It's a good thing for the state of Kansas. And I would, when the time comes, ask you to vote in favor of it. So with that, I will stand for questions.
The chair recognizes Representative Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, would you take a couple questions?
Certainly.
I just want to say, I hope we see eye to eye.
I won't blink twice about it.
Would you, a couple of things that this whole bill revolves around in my mind that are still unclear, and I say this because I've spoken with, we've all got I've gotten hundreds of emails, I assume everybody has on this subject. That there's a couple of different issues it kind of hinges on, and could you explain the best you can the difference between an optometrist and an ophthalmologist? Because I talk to people and they really don't get it.
Sure. So for me, the distinction is pretty easy. An ophthalmologist is a medical doctor. This is not a prop, but a medical doctor can treat the entire body. Their specialization is in the eyes, but they can treat the entire body. An optometrist typically has a bachelor's degree and then goes to 4 years of additional school as an optometry doctor, and they treat specifically the eye. In terms of the practicality of it, ophthalmologist's scope of practice is larger, obviously including the body. The optometrist treats the eye.
Very good, thank you. And the other issue that I hope is very clear is it came up in committee and calendar earlier this morning. Kind of what is surgery and what is not surgery? Do you have any there are medical definitions, but what would you say a surgery would be in common layman's terms?
I don't know what the medical definition of surgery is. I do know that there are surgical procedures that optometrists have been able to do. If I go back to my notes, it would go back to 1987 or something like that, that says there are things that are considered surgery that they can do. I stand for a more precise medical definition of surgery, but I would say this also, and I say this in all with all respect to my colleague here. I think the word surgery is one of those things that has been used to try to scare people about this bill. We're talking about specific procedures that optometrists are trained to do in school that they can do and perform safely. But I believe that the term surgery is a little bit of a scare tactic with this bill, and I mean that with all due respect.
Thank you. Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Just to be clear, surgery is not meant to be a scare tactic. Surgery is basically just anything that penetrates the body or relocates tissue. And that brings up the concern I have with this bill, and that is that it's not just a scope bill. It's not just inching forward in turf of what can and can't be done. This is a categorical change. Previously, non-physicians, no medical license, we're not doing surgery over the last 100 years. This is a sea change. It's a seismic shift in allowing non-physicians to do surgical procedures with lasers and scalpels and other instruments. One thing that bothers me about the bill is, if I could tell just a quick story. I was an intern at a major medical center in the trauma suite. I was working as a family practice intern, and it was the middle of the night, and I was working with a surgery resident who had been a surgery resident for a couple of years, and we were talking about the procedures that we had done. I, as a family practice doctor, had done appendectomies, cholecystectomies, C-sections, and I asked the surgery resident how many procedures they had done. They said 0. They had been a surgery resident for 2 years and really hadn't done any surgeries. The reason I bring that up is, in medical training, you don't just learn a technique. I have all confidence that an optometrist can be trained to do certain techniques. That's not the frame of the issue. What a surgeon does is they have to have a backup plan. They have to think ahead what complications could happen. If you're cutting into the abdomen, if you nick the aorta, is someone there who can repair the aorta? One of the problems I have with this bill is there's no backup plan. There's no physician requirement to be in the loop. It is, to be as blunt as I can, it's non-physicians doing, without a medical license, doing surgery without a physician in the loop in case there's a surgical complications. Some of these lasers that they use, if you nick a blood vessel, the eyeball fills with blood, pressure increases, the patient can lose their eye. There has to be a backup plan for complications and for emergencies. Another is if optometrists are doing surgery, I really believe that they should be part of the Board of Healing Arts, because the Board of Healing Arts has physicians and surgeons and several other specialties that are able to regulate surgery. This is entirely new for the optometrists. I also believe, if you have the bill, page 2, line 27, you might see that the bill requires that optometrists that treat glaucoma to live up to the standards and practice to the standards of physicians and surgeons. It needs to be more than glaucoma. If they're doing surgery, if they're doing these procedures, they need to have the same standards as a physician or a medical doctor who's licensed, or a surgeon, and that's not in this bill. Basically, I tried to personally get all parties involved together to try and work out these differences, because I think that's extremely important. They would not. I tried to table the bill in committee to have the parties get together and work out a compromise, and that also failed. I think for the sake of patient safety, for patient confidence in care that we've developed over the last 100 years as we've been credentialing physicians in medical schools, I would urge you to join me and vote no on this bill, perhaps have an interim committee, but have these parties work out their differences so that for patient care, so that there is a backup plan in these surgeries, so that there's a standard of care met on all procedures, and so that they can be held accountable with other surgeons. And with that, Mr. Chair, thank you for your time.
The chair recognizes Representative Barth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am so excited to be in the presence of you in the chair and on the floor here today. So one of the reasons why I felt like I needed to come down here, but the other thing I wanted to come down here is just to share the perspective from a student's perspective who's currently in school to get this degree today. This happens to be one of my constituents. Happens to be from Kansas, going to school in Missouri at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. And happens to be my nephew. So know quite a bit about him personally. This bill allows for him, as a future optometrist, to eventually practice in Kansas, to be trained at a school in Missouri and come back here and be incentivized to do exactly what they're trained to do in school.
For heaven's sake, people, please just be quiet for 2 seconds so she can get it out, and then we can move on. Please continue.
Also, I think it gives everybody the more accessibility across the state to get the care that they need from the eye doctors that they see. So I just wanted to say, body, I am in support of HB 2223, and thank you for your time.
The chair recognizes Representative Susan Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I enthusiastically support the passage of HB 2223. And the carrier of the bill did a great job of explaining a bill. There are a lot of details, but it's really not that complicated. But basically, what this does is it opens up the full scope of practice of optometrists. Those people that have been trained to be optometrists have gone to school, been certified, they've been examined, they have passed every test you can think of to become an optometrist. Since 2017 in particular, have been trained to do the 3 laser procedures that we're talking about. Those standards are the same all across. We don't have a school of optometry in Kansas. The closest one to us is in Missouri, but it's Oklahoma also. And one of the proponents mentioned that many of the students, when they go to the school in Oklahoma, they end up staying in Oklahoma because Oklahoma has passed this same bill there that will then let them practice to the full extent of their practice. We need more health care. We need more access to health care, period. And for me, I asked myself, will this bill expand access to health care, and in this case, eye health care, in our rural and frontier areas of Kansas? And yes, it will. So some scenarios could be of you have a person who has had, let's say, cataract surgery, and they begin to see some changes in their vision after the cataract surgery. There is a procedure using the laser, this laser procedure, one of the 3 laser procedures that we're talking about, can be performed by the optometrist. And there may be an optometrist that is much closer than the ophthalmologist is. Sometimes ophthalmologists can only get to a certain area of the state 1 or 2 times a month. So then that person would have to wait until that ophthalmologist reaches their area in order to have that procedure done. It's an in-office procedure, and it can be done by an optometrist if we allow them to practice to their full extent here in Kansas. So every optometry school or college in the country includes these 3 procedures as part of their curriculum, and students are considering whether or not they will be able to practice to the extent of their education and training when they are deciding upon where to practice after graduation. We want them to come back here. There are many students in Oklahoma at the School of Optometry that are from Kansas. They don't come back. We absolutely need them here in Kansas. This would help to reduce wait times and eliminate the burden of traveling out of town or even out of state for procedures optometrists are already trained to do, they're educated to do, and they're certified to perform. This is not a seismic shift. There is no shift. The only thing is allowing the optometrists who currently practice in Kansas and any students considering moving to Kansas to practice, to allow them to practice to the full extent of their training and education. This is what this is about. Again, I urge you to vote yes on HB 2223 to bring more access to our rural and frontier areas of the state. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those of you that know me know that I'm a very strong proponent of access to health. We fought some long battles over this same principle that there appears to be a group that doesn't want to allow anything, we look at the words diagnosis and surgery. And basically, if you look at that very broad diagnosis, that can be, if I see you've got a runny nose, I feel confident in common sense that that's a problem. Putting a needle in somebody is almost considered surgery. And this is a very good bill because it outlines exactly what they can do, and there's a big, long paragraph on what they cannot do, which is probably one of the better bills there. And in my case, I live 6 miles from the Kansas-Oklahoma line, and I have some eye issues, and I've been trying to get an ophthalmologist appointment through my optometrist, which they come in about once a month, and I missed the last one. So I won't be able to get an appointment for probably another month. And at that time, the traveling ophthalmologist, that's a hard word for me to say, will come in, and he won't have that, my optometrist won't have maybe a $10,000 piece of equipment for him to be able to utilize. So that means I'll have to drive to probably Emporia or some other place to make a secondary appointment. And you know, it causes a lot of grief. And being 6 miles from the Kansas-Oklahoma line, I can drive 20 miles to Bartlesville, Oklahoma. They've had this forever. They teach it in their schools. They give this training, and basically can schedule probably what I need with an optometrist that has that. I guess I want that flexibility. I want safety, but I don't see that the harm will be there like we've been told. And I think this is a really good bill, and I think I would urge you to support it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to start by expressing my gratitude for the representative from Lansing for bringing this bill forward. I think that whenever I have an opportunity to find common ground, putting aside party lines, I'm going to embrace it. And this has been an example of one of those bills where a lot of good can happen. And I was sent here to do some good. So I'm standing in and speaking in support of this bill. I'd like to cover a couple misconceptions and clear up a little confusion that's been sent our way via email. First of all, is an optometrist licensed by the Board of Healing Arts? No, neither are dentists. They're independent doctoral level professionals, and they're regulated by the Board of Examiners in Optometry, whose purpose is to protect the public and ensure that optometry law is followed. Same sort of situation as the dental board and the pharmacy board when they're set up in their missions. Are doctors of optometry required to carry malpractice insurance? Yes. Optometrists are required to have a minimum of $1 million in malpractice insurance. Along with dentists and pharmacists, optometrists are not a part of the Healthcare Stabilization Fund, but they are able to access affordable malpractice insurance instead. Does this bill allow an optometrist to perform surgical procedures such as foreign body removal, dilation, probing, closing the tear drainage structure, and debridgement of the corneal epithelium? Sure, that's existing law. These are procedures that are already a part of the optometric practice, and they have been for many years. Is it true that the Board of Examiners in Optometry can expand scope without legislative authority? No. The Kansas Board of Examiners' role is to protect the public and ensure the law is followed.
I'm starting to think you guys are picking on me.
I think they're picking on me.
Will you guys please be quiet?
Thank you.
We just need to get through these, and we can carry on. I apologize, Representative. Please continue.
Thank you. I got an email that stated that this bill would allow optometrists to prescribe drugs without any limitation. And the truth of the matter is, optometrists can already prescribe oral and pharmaceutical drugs for conditions of the eye and adnexa. This has been the case since 1999, and HB 2223 does not expand that. It just allows optometrists to use injections and continue prescribing the oral medications that they've already been able to do. In addition, optometrists are already part of the prescription drug monitoring program, and they already maintain DEA licenses. In conclusion, optometrists are educated, trained professionals. They are certified to perform these procedures. This bill allows optometrists to provide care that they are trained to do. This bill increases the number of medical providers doing this routine procedure. This bill increases access by giving patients a choice. This bill attracts Kansas optometric students back into the state to practice to the extent of their training. The language specifically excludes invasive surgical procedures that optometrists are not trained to perform. It's very clear that there are guidelines in place to ensure patient safety, and I would urge a yes vote, regardless of which side of the aisle you sit on, because I think this is good lawmaking. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Picker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, body. I'm coming to you as a representative, but also a veteran nurse. I've been a nurse now for 52 years, so I've seen a lot. But I think this is a great bill. Optometrists are qualified to do these procedures. I've seen the machine myself, and they've demonstrated how they go about doing it. They take very little time, minutes. And I've also known cases where patients needed to see an ophthalmologist, as was reported earlier by another representative, and they've had to wait a month or longer, and their situation is becoming more complicated. So if they could get in to see an optometrist in a timely manner, why not? That makes perfect sense. The access in Kansas is so important, especially in western Kansas. So I don't have much more to add, except that I do trust optometrists, and I fully support this bill, and it's so exciting to see that it's a bipartisan bill. So please vote for it.
The chair recognizes Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could the carrier of the bill stand for questions?
Certainly.
So are we breaking new ground here? Are we the first state ever to pass a measure like this?
No, as a matter of fact, there are 12 other states who already have this law and these procedures on the books. And I found out this morning that our neighbor to the east, the state of Missouri, has a very similar bill in their legislature this year. It's in their health committee.
Okay. And the states that have passed this, do they have dramatically different health outcomes or any negative impacts from having this law in their states?
No, I mentioned 146,000 procedures, and I think there were 2 negative outcomes. Malpractice rates have not gone up or skyrocketed due to this these procedures. So no, it's quite the opposite.
Thank you. Thank you. So, body, a couple years ago, my wife and I both had lens replacement surgery with an ophthalmologist in Johnson County. And I'll tell you, it was life-changing. We both, we had glasses all over the house, all over our vehicles for reading. And all of a sudden, we were unburdened by all that. And my treatment, I had no complications, no problems at all. But my wife, after she had the lens replacement, something occurred that very commonly occurs, which is the back of the capsule that holds the lens became cloudy. And there's a laser treatment that's considered in this bill. It's called YAG or YAG treatment. It's a very quick procedure. It takes like 2 or 3 minutes to just basically smooth out that cloudiness in the back of the eye. But because in Kansas, the 3 optometrists within 5 minutes of my house were not allowed to do it, we had to go back to the surgeon that had done the lens replacements. My wife had to wait months for her turn to have a 2 or 3 minute procedure that optometrists in my district and surrounding districts were already trained to do, but were prohibited to do it from doing because of our state law. I don't have any ophthalmologists in my district, but I've got a bunch of optometrists and I trust them. They all tell me that this is a great law, and so I would urge you to support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have been on the fence about this bill, back and forth, back and forth. And my husband has a cousin who is an optometrist, and she studied in Boston, and she had a practice out there. And then she's moved to the Kansas City area. And so I called her last evening, and I said, help me understand this. Help me understand what I need to know about this. And she said, Dawn, I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to do it. I have been practicing for a while, and she said probably 75% of optometrists won't do it. You don't have to worry about people doing it that aren't going to be capable because they won't put in the investment and the schooling to do it. The only people that are going to be doing it that are optometrists are going to be the ones who are qualified and want to spend that investment in their practice. So she said, I'm still going to refer people to the optometrist that can or the ophthalmologist. So after she told me that, I'm a yes. Thank you for listening.
The chair recognizes Representative Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I look around this chamber, I see a lot of people wearing glasses. I think that you probably have a high level of trust in your optometrist. And I would like to thank the carrier of the bill for doing an excellent job, and those people who preceded me in the well for saying the things that I was going to say. So I'm not going to stay up here very long. This is a very, very good bill, folks, and I applaud the body for not trying to muck it up with amendments to decrease the effectiveness of it. I urge you to support 2223. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If there is no further discussion, Representative Bueller, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to make one comment to I guess you would call it the opponents of this. I have the highest degree of respect for my colleague from Coffeyville, and the respect for the ophthalmologic profession, but this is a good bill for Kansas. So I just want everybody to know that. So, Mr. Chair, I move that when the body rises to report, they report House Bill 2223 favorably for passage. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You've heard the motion by Representative Bueller to report HB 2223 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The next item of business is SB 36. For the purpose of carrying SB 36, the chair recognizes Representative Roser.
Mike? Thank you, Mr. Chair. If there were no amendments, I move the adoption of the committee report.
There are no amendments. You can proceed.
Thank you. I rise before the body to present SB 36. SB 36 amends the funding formula for local county conservation districts. To be clear, this bill does not provide funding for conservation districts. Funding decisions are made through the normal legislative budget process, but SB 36 would change the county to state match from a 1-to-1 ratio for a formula that allows for up to a 2-to-1 state to county funding with a state cap of no more than $50,000 per county. SB 36 will provide the opportunity to provide an enhanced state match of county funding of up to 2-to-1, subject to appropriation. This enhanced match rate with a cap to limit total state expenditures will help lead to a more stable district workforce with the experience to effectively deliver programs to constituents at the local level. This issue passed in the House late last year by a vote of 120 to 3, as presented as HB 2800. It came to the Senate late in the process and was ultimately enacted as a budget proviso last year. This language has been in effect since July 1, and we are hoping to make this permanent with the passage of SB 36. With that, Mr. Chair, I will stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The carrier of the bill did a great job explaining what it does. I encourage your support. It's good for agriculture and it's good for the environment.
If there is no further discussion, Representative Roser, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that when the body rises to report, they report SB 36 favorably for passage.
You have heard the motion by Representative Roser to report SB 36 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. All right, next item of business is SB 58. For the purpose of carrying SB 58, the chair recognizes Representative Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. SB 58 passed the Senate 40-0. This bill revises the multi-year flex account, we call that MIFA system, by modifying the allocation of water usage for term permits. It standardizes the calculation for determining how much water can be deposited into a MIFA, ensuring that the total amount does not exceed 500% of the base water rights authorized quantity, or an equivalent calculation based on irrigation requirements. Additionally, it clarifies that any remaining water from an expiring MIFA can be carried over to a new MIFA under strict conditions, preventing excessive withdrawals while maintaining operational flexibility for water rights holders. The bill introduces administrative and financial reforms by shifting the cost of the MIFA program administration from permit fees to the Water Appropriation Certification Fund, reducing financial burdens on applicants. It also reduces reporting frequency, requiring the chief engineer to submit reports every 4 years instead of annually, easing regulatory overhead while maintaining oversight. The chief engineer is also granted expanded authority to implement regulations, enforce water use compliance, and require additional measurement or reporting when necessary, ensuring sustainable management of Kansas groundwater resources. Proponents were Kansas Department of Agriculture, Kansas Livestock Association, and the Kansas Farm Bureau, saying this improves the MIFA account and reduces reliance on historical water usage, which promotes water conservation. There was a neutral, the Big Bend Groundwater Management District, because of concerns about excessive flexibility in the program. Fiscal impact is none. I stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The carrier did an excellent job describing the bill. MIFAs are a wonderful conservation tool for our state, and this bill makes some good updates to the underlying statute, so I would urge your support. Thank you.
If there is no further discussion, Representative Essex, you may close.
Mr. Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports SB 58 favorably for passage.
You have heard the motion by Representative Essex to report SB 58 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The chair recognizes Majority Leader Croft.
Mr. Chair, pursuant to House Rule 1903, I move that HCR 5001 appearing under the order of business, general orders be passed over and retain a place on the calendar.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes and the motion is adopted. You may continue.
Mr. Chair, pursuant to House Rule 1903, I move substitute for Senate Bill 29 appearing under the order of business, general orders be passed over and retain a place on the calendar.
You have heard the motion from Representative Croft. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes and the motion is adopted. The next item of business is SB 199. For the purpose of carrying SB 199, the chair recognizes Representative Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There were committee amendments, so I move the adoption of the committee report.
You heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes and the committee report is adopted. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 199, as amended, would permit year-round fireworks sales under certain conditions, make additional changes to the law related to the sale of fireworks. The bill would allow sales of fireworks to be to the public for personal use by individuals registered with the state fire marshal as permanent retailers from permanent structures at permanent locations within the state. Sales by permanent retailers would be required to be made from a physical location. Permanent retailers would be required to register annually with the state fire marshal. That regulation would allow them to lawfully possess and convey fireworks subject to applicable law. Seasonal retailers would not be required to register as such with the state fire marshal, but would be limited to sales during the period of June 20th through July 7th of the calendar year. The bill would replace the definition of distributor in current law with 3 categories of distributor and create corresponding categories of license. Unlimited distributor would be defined as to mean a person engaged in any of the activities of distributors as found in current law, in addition to activities of permanent retailers established by the bill, while distributors of display fireworks and distributors of articles pyrotechnic would be limited to distributing fireworks corresponding to their respective terms. And additional provisions of the bill would make it unlawful to possess, purchase, sell, or offer for sale fireworks labeled as for professional use only without current license issued by the state fire marshal. The bill would require the state fire marshal to adopt rules and regulations to implement the provisions of the bill. And the House committee amended the bill to go into effect upon publication in the Kansas Register. And the Senate vote on this bill was 27-13 in favor. And according to the fiscal note prepared by the Division of Budget on the bill, as introduced, the state fire marshal estimates enactment of the bill would require $132,000 of expenses from the state fire marshal fee fund in fiscal year 2026 and $83,000 of expenses in fiscal year 2027, which would be made to support the addition of 1 full-time equivalent position, ensuring compliance with the provisions of the bill. And the Department of Revenue indicates increased fireworks sales resulting from the enactment of the bill would have an effect of increasing sales tax revenues by an unknown amount. And this bill would enable seasonal retailers, as I mentioned before, the opportunity to sell retail fireworks during a window from June 20th through July 7th, instead of the current June 27th through July 5th timeline, And that current timeline is fire marshal's regulation, not statute. And the seasonal sales would be mostly what people think of as fireworks stands. In addition, this bill would provide for year-round retail sales by state licensed dealers and more established, what you might call brick and mortar type stores. And with that, I stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Sawyer Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're doing a great job. All right, so body, we had a little bit of discussion in our caucus and we're a little bit divided on this. Some of our members will be supporting this because we support the ability of small nonprofits to be able to have that expanded ability to do their fundraising. But also some other points that were brought up that were worth sharing with the entire body also include, we did have some testimony from someone that suffered from PTSD. And so this can be difficult for our veterans. Now, granted, this doesn't necessarily make fireworks legal or illegal, but just the way that you feel about them in general. And another person really brought up the valid point that, you know, most of us on Friday night were smelling smoke from wildfires, even in our houses with the windows closed. And so that is another point that was brought up that might be discussed further by other people. But, you know, so vote your conscience on this, but make sure you're considering all different aspects of it. And I thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in confusion regarding Senate Bill 199. I hadn't planned to be here, and I know you don't want me to be here very long, but I do have a question for my friend, the distinguished representative from Mulberry.
Go ahead.
I think I heard you describe something about a rule or regulation related to this bill. Could you refresh my memory as to what you told us?
You mean the current window for fireworks sales is June 27th through July 5th. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I thought you may have said that this gave the fire marshal some power to implement some kind of a regulation, or does it take away the fire marshal's power to regulate?
No, fire marshal still has the same powers that they do now. And as a matter of fact, they will be regulating the, by registration or license, whatever you want to call it, the year-round retailers that would be allowed under this bill.
Thank you for your help on that. I do now see that this apparently continues the power of the administrative state to enact rules and regulations. And as much talk as we hear about constitutional amendments and how rules and regulations are devastating business in the state, why in the world would we be reenacting legislation to give the administrative state more power to implement rules and regulations? Well, I'll tell you why. Because nonprofit organizations, understandably, want to make some money off of fireworks sales. I ran 3 fireworks stands when I was a kid for a nonprofit. I understand that. But for me, it's simply not worth it. Anything we do to expand the availability of fireworks in this state results in more fires and more injuries to children. I therefore cannot support SB 199. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Chuck Smith.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. In Pittsburgh, we have Jake's Fireworks, which supports many, I don't know how many, but many really good jobs. And they do a lot of positive things, not in Kansas, but throughout the whole United States. So, you know, Missouri, you can buy them. We live right there on the border, so you can get your hands on them, whether it's sold in Missouri or sold in Kansas. But like I say, it's a real positive for the state of Kansas, I feel, to have this extra jobs and incomes and so forth. So thank you very much.
The chair recognizes Representative Schlingensiepen. I know what you're doing here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question for the bringer of the bill. Thank you. Does this bill in any way take away the authority of municipalities and counties to have their own firework ordinances?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, now if they want to allow permanent fireworks retailers, they can do it just by the enactment of this bill. You know, if they decided they didn't want to have a permanent retailer in their jurisdiction, they could pass an ordinance to prohibit that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your answer. Appreciate it. Thanks.
The chair recognizes Representative Mosley.
Thank you very much. Could the bringer of the bill, carrier of the bill, stand for one question? Just, thank you very much. Just to be clear from what the previous representative said, you said that this will allow permanent retailers now in communities?
That's right.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so I have two comments. The first thing is, if anyone's ever driven through Missouri on I-70, we know what it looks like when communities have permanent fireworks displays along with antique shops and adult stores, but we are not going to be there. But my big thing is, I'm going to speak from someone who works with veterans a lot. I think that if you've ever sat down on the 4th of July, and like from what veterans who have dealt with, I flew, so I was not on the ground during Iraq and Afghanistan, but I had a friend who was in the Kansas National Guard. From the point that he left Kansas and came back to Kansas was 22 months. He was caught up in the surge. They found out on CNN that their unit was getting extended. They didn't find out from their leadership. And then thank you. And then the week after they found out they were being extended, they lost a lot of guys. And I remember sitting on 4th of July and they said it's not about when fireworks are planned, it's not a big deal for them, is when it's sporadic, it takes them back to where they were. And I think it's something really hard about seeing I have a little Shih Tzu who doesn't like loud noises, and seeing a person who has reverted
Carry on, Representative.
has reverted back to where they were, and they're shaking and they're shivering, and they look at your dog and they say, "Don't worry, buddy, I'm scared too." So having extended fireworks like this is going to be a real issue with veterans who have served. We don't have a lot of Vietnam veterans left, but a lot of those guys hide in their basements when fireworks are going off. So I think that that's something to consider before you vote for this bill.
The chair recognizes Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a veteran who served in Iraq and Afghanistan with a lot of other folks, I'm in full support of this bill. I encourage the body to vote for it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If there's no further discussion, Representative Collins, you may close. I apologize. Last second add there. Chair recognizes Representative Susan Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When these kinds of bills come before us, I think about my neighbors who are veterans and who all have PTSD, and it's pretty severe. There's all kinds of things that they have to do in order to get through these days of whether it's July 4th or it's New Year's, after the Chiefs win a Super Bowl, whatever it is, there's fireworks going on. And we're also surrounded, where I live, we're surrounded by apartment complexes. And if you live by an apartment complex, you know what happens. Fireworks are thrown into the dumpsters. And so it sounds even worse. It sounds like what I would imagine a war zone would sound like. And I only say that because that's what my veteran neighbors tell me. Um, They don't like fireworks. They would not be supportive of this. There's so many things that are going on. Earlier in our caucus, one of our representatives pointed out all the wildfires that we're having. You know, some of those happen because of being careless. People are careless all the time with fireworks. So I am not in support of this, and I do this in the name of my veteran neighbors who have severe PTSD. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to point out that a lot of the municipalities are under budget constraints. So I would urge you to call your local fire departments and get their opinion on it. Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, now Representative Collins, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to address the concern of veterans. I'm a veteran myself. I didn't serve in combat, so can't say I entirely know, but I do have friends who have, and as a matter of fact, a good friend of mine who is a retired Master Chief who was in the Brownwater Navy in Vietnam. I spent this past 4th of July at his place shooting fireworks. But I do understand that, but that's where local government comes in. I mean, I think the restrictions should be different, say in a, as the previous representative mentioned, say in an apartment complex than it is if, say you have some acreage out in the country. You definitely can more safely fire off fireworks, and that's where our local governments come in to pass ordinance that are appropriate for their communities. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I move that when the committee rises and reports that it reports Senate Bill 199 favorably for passage.
You have heard the motion by Representative Collins to report SB 199 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. They do have it. Motion passes. This concludes our general orders. The chair recognizes the majority leader.
Mr. Chair, I move we rise and report.
You've heard the motion to rise and report. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes.
The clerk will read the committee report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of the whole recommends that HB 2223, SB 36, SB 58 be passed, SB 199 be passed as amended, HCR 5001, SB 29 be passed over and retained a place on the calendar.
The speaker recognizes Representative Turk to adopt the committee of the whole report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the adoption of the committee of the whole report.
You've heard the motion to adopt the committee report. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. Stand by for a few moments. The speaker recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Rule 2311, I move that an emergency be declared and House Bill 2223, Senate Bill 36, Senate Bill 58, and Senate Bill 199 be advanced to that order of business, final action on bills and concurrent resolutions.
You've all heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion carries. Final action on bills and concurrent resolutions. The clerk will read.
HB 2223 by Committee on Health and Human Services, an act concerning health professions and practices related to optometry, modifying certain provisions of the optometry law related to scope of practice, definitions, and credentialing requirements.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2223. The clerk will open the roll, and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Simmons votes aye. Seeing 10 hands, call is in order. Dormant will secure the doors. Clerk will read the roll.
Haskins, Penn, Wagner, Ward.
Not seeing 10 hands, calls raised. All right. With 97 having voted in favor and 24 against, the passage of House Bill 2223, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The clerk will read.
SB 36 by Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources, an act concerning conservation districts, relating to the financing of operating conservation districts, increasing the cap on the amount of monies dispersed by the Division of Conservation to conservation districts, providing an increased matching basis for state monies dispersed to conservation districts based on amounts allocated by the Board of County Commissioners for such districts.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 36. The clerk will open the roll, and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative O'Habasam votes aye. Any further changes? Seeing none, with 119 having voted in favor and 2 against the passage of Senate Bill 36, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The clerk will read.
SB 58 by Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources, an act concerning water, relating to multi-year flex accounts, modifying the requirements for and authorize allocations from such accounts.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 58. The clerk will open the roll, and you may record your vote. As every member had the opportunity to record their vote, the clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Turk votes aye. Representative Roth votes aye. Any further changes? Seeing none. With 119 having voted in favor and 2 against the passage of Senate Bill 58, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The clerk will read.
SB 199 by Committee on Commerce, an act concerning fireworks, defining the fireworks sales season for seasonal retailers of consumer fireworks and providing for year-round sales by permanent retailers of consumer fireworks, requiring registration with the state fire marshal by permanent retailers, creating the license categories of distributor of display fireworks, distributor of articles, pyrotechnic, and unlimited distributor, limiting lawful sale of fireworks labeled for professional use only to certain license categories.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 199. The clerk will open the roll, and you may record your vote. As every member had the opportunity to record their vote, the clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing 10 hands, call is in order. Doorman will secure the doors. Clerk will read the roll.
Haskins, Penn, Wagner, Ward.
Representative Carr, we are on a call of the House for an explanation and for an excuse to vote present for the body.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an organization that benefits from the sale of fireworks, so I chose to vote present.
This is okay, before the body, now arises the question on whether we are going to allow Representative Carr to vote present on this matter or not. A yes vote allows him to vote present. A no vote means that he will have to vote yes or no on this issue. And if I recall, it's 2/3, so it is 84. All those in favor of allowing Representative Carr to vote present, vote aye. All opposed, no. Granted. Any further changes or explanation of votes? Seeing none. Seeing none, with 75 having voted in favor and 45 against the passage of Senate Bill 199, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The body will stand at ease. Reports of standing committees, the clerk will read.
The Committee on Judiciary recommends SCR 1611 as amended by the Senate Committee of the Whole be adopted. The Committee on Judiciary recommends SB 128 be passed. The Committee on Insurance recommends HCR 5013 be adopted. The Committee on Education recommends HB 2299 be amended by substituting with a new bill to be designated as substitute for House Bill number 2299 as follows: an act concerning anti-Semitism, and the substitute bill be passed. The Committee on Federal and State Affairs recommends SB 13 as amended by Senate Committee be passed. The Committee on Federal and State Affairs recommends SB 137 be passed. The Committee on Federal and State Affairs recommends SCR 1604 be adopted. The Committee on Federal and State Affairs recommends HB 2204 be passed.
We are going to go ahead and stand at ease. We are currently waiting for a resolution to come up from the revisor's office, and so it might be just a few minutes. Representative Tarwater will replace Representative Hubert on the House Committee on Federal and State Affairs on Tuesday, March 18th at 1:30 p.m. This appointment will expire at the end of the day on March 18th. Representative Berquist will replace Representative Ward on the Committee on Judiciary on Tuesday, March 18th. This appointment will expire at the end of the day on March 18th. Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just like the chair said, Fed and State, we are going to have a meeting at 1:30 in the old Supreme Court room. We're going to take up HR 6016, 1:30 here in just about a half hour. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Stogsdill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Speaker, Democrats, good news. We will have agenda tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. 7:45. Okay, 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, 152 South.
Do I hear a 7:30? Do I hear a 7:15? All right, Representative Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Southeast Kansas delegation will meet immediately upon adjournment, room 142 South. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For those Democrats that are missing out coming in at 7 a.m., we have the story of David and Bashima at room 142. So if before you come in, you could come at 7 o'clock, get a good message, then you'd be ready for at 8 o'clock. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Rajas.
Good afternoon, colleagues. What is today? Ag Day. All right. We couldn't go a day without agriculture. And today is that day, but it's a time to celebrate all week. Whether you like a steak, a pork chop, or a big old salad, please thank a Kansas farmer. Those who feed, fuel, and help produce the fiber that we all enjoy our days. So with that, as a way to celebrate National Agriculture Day, the Agriculture Committee and Natural Resource Committee meeting for today has been canceled. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's going to be hard to follow up, but with that, seeing no further announcements, Majority Leader Croft for a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the thing on my desk that was signed. I appreciate it this time. $2, I guess. Republicans, we will calendar tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. in the old Supreme Court. We'll do that until 9:30. Everybody will be on the floor at 9:30. We'll go until about 5 o'clock is the plan. I know there's several things going on tomorrow night, but we will have lunch. The intent is if we've achieved all the things, we may go back to a calendar for us during the lunch, and then we'll continue. If not, we may just have lunch here on the floor and just keep moving. So we'll play that by ear as we get going. Mr. Speaker, I move the House adjourn until Wednesday, March 19th at 9:30 a.m.
You've all heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and we are adjourned.